peace be upon you. Thank you so much for joining us again today here at the Reimagined Schools, where we are changing the way we educate. So, in the news over the past few weeks since the unfortunate shooting, an incident that took place in Parkland, Florida, there's been a lot of conversation about Army teachers, whether or not this should occur, whether or not, more security, more guns are needed in schools. So, if you've been following the news, then I think that the answer to that question has become very clear over the last couple of days. If you've been following the news, you can recall the story of the teacher out of Georgia who barricaded himself into a classroom and fired off a shot in the Georgia high school. Let me give you a little background. A teacher who allegedly fired a gun at a Georgia high school was taken into custody Wednesday afternoon after barricading himself in the classroom for nearly an hour. No students at Dalton High School were hurt directly in the incident or remain in danger after they were evacuated as the crisis unfolded, according to Dalton police. The teacher, who was identified as Randall Davidson, who was 53 years old, initially barricaded himself in an empty classroom at about 11:30 a.m. Students tried to get into the classroom because it was time for them to get into class, but the teacher wouldn't let them in. There were then reports that a gun was fired. Now, Davidson is a social studies teacher. He surrendered after about 30 to 45 minutes, according to the police. The principal of Dalton High School, Steve Bartow, said he was called by an assistant principal and told that the teacher wasn't letting students into the classroom. That he tried to open the door, but the teacher slammed it and yelled, "Go away," and made some nonsensical noises. That's according to the assistant principal. When the principal went to the classroom with his key to open the door, the teacher slammed the door again and warned he had a gun. At that point, the principal put the school into lockdown, and it was shortly after that they heard the gunshot. No one got hurt. There was one student who hurt an ankle trying to run during the incident, but no one was injured. So, this story is a perfect example of why teachers should not have guns in the classroom. Even though there may be people who outside of the classroom on their private time are, certified, trained, properly to handle firearms, it is not appropriate for teachers to have guns in the classroom. And so this is an example. Here you have someone, and we're waiting for the story to come out. I'm almost positive that it's going to be a story about he had mental issues or he was having an emotional breakdown that day or whatever it may be. It's going to come to some terms, something like that. Because the question that immediately we should all ask is, why did this teacher have a gun in the school? Why did this teacher have a gun in the school? Okay, maybe we'll get an answer to that. Maybe we won't. But this is a perfect example of why teachers should not be armed. And when I say teachers, I'm including all staff members. I'm including the principal. Because if you have someone who is unstable themselves, you can't rely on that individual to utilize force under the conditions where it would be necessary. Because here we have an example where there was no threat. Students are simply trying to get into the classroom, and you have someone who was obviously unstable with a gun in school, without any permission to have that gun in school, as far as we know, who could potentially harm himself and, of course, students. So this is a good argument as to why there should be no guns in school. We know that we have in many of our schools a police presence. Through school resource officers, or even in a district where I work, there were actual police officers who worked at the school during the day. I'm not going to say they were like security, but they were there in the building. Now, there is a whole other discussion, and I did another video on this some time ago about the role of police officers in schools, and you can check that out. It was about San Jose police and the decision that was made on the role of officers in school. I just believe that if we are going to have, armed individuals in the school, it should be someone that's their job, such as a police officer. As long as there are clearly defined expectations on how and under what circumstances firearms should be used. We would like to think that police officers are aware of that, and certainly, their training suggested they should be. But in any case, it should still be defined as to how and why firearms should be used in school by people who have been trained to do so, and that does not include teachers. Okay, so I am not for teachers being armed in the classroom, and it doesn't matter to me what their training is. I just believe that that's inappropriate. And when you look at today's headlines, when we see so many people in the schools who are not always doing the right things, remember I told you to just do a Google on racism in public schools. How would we view a situation where we have someone who in just words are making statements to students that are completely inappropriate and racist? We're going to let some of these people get armed? I think that is a terrible idea. It is a mistake, and it is a tragedy waiting to happen. So if we need to learn anything, and we are always being reactive, we're reacting to these situations, we need to take the time to be proactive and develop some programming that will get to the heart of the matter as to what is occurring, why these things are happening. Of course, there are many, multiple factors to that. Of course, we need to look at things like building relationships, how we can do that in a manner that makes sure we reach as many students as possible. We need to look at bullying and the impact of bullying on the decisions that some individuals make. We really, really, really need to talk more about mental health issues in education. It's a conversation that is beginning, but it is one that really needs to flourish, because that really gets to the heart of the matter. How do we address students who have mental health issues in public school? That is a part of the conversation. But I don't think we need to jump to the conversation about teachers and administrators being armed. So I'm going to provide a link to this article so that you can read it for yourself. And just note that this is a perfect example of why firearms should not be in the school, because a lot of people who are innocent could get hurt. I hope this information was helpful for you today. Please do your research. Continue to stay on top of this topic. If you have any suggestions or comments, please make sure you put them below. Like, subscribe, make sure you share this information. And if you want further information about the Reimagined Schools and what we do, please go to our website at thereimaginedschools.com, where you can find out more information about us. Thank you. Peace. God's peace be upon you. And remember, you are obligated to keep the peace.